So thank you very much. Glad to be here and with Arena Blockchain. So this is a practical use case, and I'm going to talk a little bit about blockchain for those who are fairly new to it. I highlighted here the term social machines, actually, because it's the only time it's used in the presentation, so it's in the title. And this, what we're about to see, is an example of what I would consider a social machine, which is what Tim Berners-Lee coined in the book Weaving the Web in 1999. And blockchain seems to be an example of what he meant by that, and he's working on things with his company Solid as well. But talking about innovation and what is blockchain, we're going to look a little bit at that. Just to provide a basic background and outline, there'll be three parts, starting to talk about extension and varieties of what this term extension means, and then looking at blockchain as an example of what I call digital extension services. And then in the third part, to the practical use case, which is Arena Blockchain, the company that I've founded here, and we used the technology partly yesterday in the debate session. So extension of innovation, I want to ask this question provocatively at the start. How much and in what ways do you extend yourself, in other words? And it goes back when I discovered this notion of the extensions of man or extensions of mankind. It was through Marshall McLuhan, the culture media technology theorist in Canada, and he says all artifacts are extensions of mankind. So what does it mean to have our own extensions, and how much do we work and use extensions in our lives? And then at the bottom I put just a quote up about how the government is looking for blockchain technology on this topic of an innovation economy. So I want to connect those two, and there's some literature on innovation that's touched on that as well. So a brief history of the university extension and the agricultural extension for those who aren't familiar with it. So McLuhan was called the sage of the Wired Age by Wired magazine. But this term extension is one he uses widely in his work. He talks about the extension of the nervous system. So you can see in the second quotation there, he's talking about the spoken word, and the great extension of electronic technology. So what that enables us in terms of communication and reaching out to people with our ideas. So it's not just physical extension. And then there's also been in recent years the extended mind. This is a thesis in cognitive studies, philosophy of mind, as well extended knowledge. I went to the program that they're doing at the University of Edinburgh to talk about how does knowledge extend, and you'll see an image from that program later on. And then the cooperative extension services, and that was actually started in the 1890s. This term was used, Augusta Chapin in the United States, talking about learning as a cooperative extension service. And then coming back again, I want to phrase blockchain as an example of digital extension services through these distributed ledgers, and I'll go into what that means coming up. A little bit more on the history of extension. So university extension was in the 1860s and 70s in Oxford and Cambridge. It continues today. It's taken the name distance learning or ongoing lifelong learning. And a quote about what it is, it was a movement. It was spreading knowledge from the universities to the towns or cities where people didn't have access, going to factories and giving lectures. In the United States, it moved from England to the United States, and they had a land grant system where the states gave land to the universities, and they would outreach through agricultural programs, civic education, and other such things. Even today, the agricultural extension has this kind of saying, extending knowledge, changing lives. So we're talking about doing that digitally nowadays, inventing the future, and this is all about innovation. And innovation diffusion theory is something that's been talked about in literature quite as well. In Canada, we have the Antigonish movement, which started at St. Francis Xavier University, and they had the first extension department in Canada, which was in 1928. So think again of ways that the knowledge can be extended to other areas outside of the universities themselves. And that's what we find ourselves in today, which is this digital extension of universities. Would you like a MOOC with your higher education? What is a MOOC? Because that's extension of knowledge, right? So how does this transition into blockchain? So basically, the University and Agricultural Extension Services were a decentralized technological innovation system of taking knowledge and ideas from one place and extending it to another. And in its basic meaning, a blockchain is simply a distributed ledger. And people will call it the digital move to the Internet 3.0. It's not just one way, it's not just two ways, it's multiple ways, peer-to-peer, end-to-end. Some have called it the Internet of Value. Now values are going to be able to be exchanged on the Internet in a different way than they are. And I put question mark behind trust machine because is it going to really change the way we trust each other? And the security and the safety is very important for that in our digital identities. Andreas Antonopoulos is one of the most prolific speakers so far on the blockchain, and he says something really amazing and even miraculous is happening to reorder these fundamental among institutions around network-centric systems. This language has already been available, but what are those systems going to look like? And that's what I want to look at in the next sort of applied section here. But something fundamental is happening is what he's saying, and the cartoon there, obviously, the changes in education we're all experiencing in our own way. When people ask me about blockchain and they say it's all hype, it's just cryptocurrency, I'm not really all that interested in talking about cryptocurrencies, but when we see this, I think it's pretty legitimate already right now. UNICEF last year gave $1 million to 6 companies that were doing startups based on blockchain around the world. Blockchain has been used in the United Nations as well for supply chain management traceability, like was discussed in the previous talk here. So when people say, oh, it's just hype, it's not going to turn into something, it's bubble memory, I'm like, well, actually, it's already being used. It's a question of how it's going to be used and how we're going to use it in Canada and in the other countries here represented. So in short, my 30-second elevator speech of what is blockchain, this is it. It's an accounting revolution. It's accounting innovation where you go from a single entry to double entry to what was called triple entry accounting, and that was only in the 1980s. A Japanese-American accounting professor at Columbia who coined the term triple entry accounting. Already back in the 14th or 10th centuries, depending on where you go, but it's a move where you have a public ledger in between the two parties. Where there's any discrepancy in the ledger, it can be mediated by that public ledger. And what blockchain is, I like to just call it an M ledger. Maybe this is the image that best represents that. An M ledger where all the computers on the network that have signed in via a Genesis block to accept that ledger community are part of the ledger accounting. So in short, that's what it is. It's boring. It's a boring ledger revolution, but it has so many implications across a whole range of sectors. And I put that image there with the golden ratio. Luci Pacioli was one of the first to write about double entry bookkeeping. Yeah. So I'll keep going then. That's an image. Why did I get into blockchain? As soon as I saw it was much more than currency, I was really fascinated by it, and I haven't stopped being interested in it. What is it? It's a ledger, a place to store information and data without anyone in charge, so it's decentralized. It's cryptographically secured. There's distributed trust infrastructure. You need algorithms and such things. Maybe connected with this event here, what is it making a difference for in education? Right now you can see what it's used for, but I think there are a whole lot of other ways, and it's really going to restructure education as well. What are the benefits from it? These are often repeated: saves time, removes cost, reduces risk, increases trust, and enables new values, which I think is the most important one. But we need to see what that's going to look like. There's contested issues. There's no really one golden egg or major application that we've seen yet. It's still coming on. I like this definition here as one of the most insightful. What does a blockchain add? You have more benefit working in the favor of the system than against it. It incentivizes you to be part of something where you can be anonymous and also participate and volunteer the information that you want. So what is Arena Blockchain? We call it, it's a debate platform that you saw yesterday, but there's just a fraction. We call it an educational trust company, the ability to enable people to be trusting that those they wouldn't normally trust. And the user is the content. We're just creating the infrastructure, and everyone else will build our own arena on it. Where are we going in terms of this educational shift and why trust? We need to be able to measure the outputs of education. So how do we grant a degree or give a grade in a course? You have usually a test or an examination or a project. And the idea behind Arena was another way that you can do that is just by having a debate. You go into the box, you finish, there's a debate, there's results, and the audience can vote, or a judge could come in. So that was the rationale behind it, a very simple black box that can apply to a whole number of different things. And the application to be able to scale is that your arena is your digital extension. So you have the ability to participate in social learning through reaching consensuses democratically, and that's what I would call the digital extension services, and that's the image of the extended knowledge in the bottom right corner there. You can see our platform. We didn't have the mobile to show yesterday, but you can see the voting. And again, you have your own ability to reach out and partner with others or see profiles there. Transitioning to this is the last slide. So what is blockchain and why it might be of interest to whatever fields that you're working on? It's a distributed ledger. That's the broader umbrella term. Blockchain is one example of a distributed ledger. And it's all of us. It's you and me, and it's going to reconfigure our relationships through finances, but also through any other way that transaction or information or data is shared. It's based on digital identity. Self-sovereignty is that new term that's being used. So ready, set, what's next, that really fits in with this innovation event. And so it's really glad to be here at ISPIM to be able to share it with you. And I put Bob Dylan because, well, something is going on, and who knows what it is. And with that, we end. Thank you.
Any quick question for Gregory right now?